All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us for the regular village board meeting on April 11th, 2023. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Lana, roll call, please.
Mayor DeBold.
Here.
Trustees Brockman.
Here.
Carroll.
Here.
Chapman. Kirkland.
Here.
Luciano. And Selfridge.
Here.
All right, we do have a quorum for the evening. Are there any citizens wishing to address the village board this evening? If you don't mind, can you just state your name for the clerk so she can get it in the record, please?
My name is Kathy Sharp.
On.
Can you hear me okay?
It doesn't sound like it's on.
Sure. This is the correct agenda.
Here comes Katie.
There you go. There you go.
Testing.
Now we got you.
Now that I have your attention, my name is Kathy Sharp. I live at 300 Shorewood Lane in Shorewood. Is this now when we mention opinions, or do we just state who we are? This is why I'm here?
Laura, you got the floor.
Oh, okay. Okay, I live on Shorewood Lane, have for over 40 years. You are familiar with my husband, Charles, has done a lot of developments in the city as well. So we're very well acquainted with the city of Shorewood and appreciate all the work that you do to create a community that we love to live in and raise our children and families. The reason I'm here tonight is because of the comprehensive plan that you have developed, specifically the Parks and Recreation part. I have spoken to Natalie about this. Part of your Parks and Recreation plan does put a path, a footpath or bike path, on the east side of the river through my backyard. And so I did want to take this time to come and address you to make a note of my objection to that at this time. If there's a way that you can accommodate your plan by rerouting that path, you need to know that we're in a very quiet area there in terms of on the radar for police or anything else. And there's a lot of things that happen back there that are unsafe, specifically to our families. And there's other people here that live back there that would put safety at risk for the people who do live there. And if there's a way that you could reroute that path, it would be really well appreciated. So that is what I'm here to tell you. If you would please consider that, I would appreciate it. And by the way, the plan itself looks beautiful, and there's a lot of wonderful things for our community. So I give my heads up and thumbs up to that. So do you have any questions for me?
No, and let me speak to that. I've sat through the planning and zoning aspect, and by all means, very appreciate the input. In regards to any of the paths that we work on continue building throughout our neighborhood, as you even touched on yourself, it's a plan. The comprehensive, the Parks and Recs part, it's a guide. It's not a set in stone aspect of how we have to get from point A to point B. So when the design team put it together, obviously they were just looking at different ways of how to move it through. So by all means, as we finally get into those different segments, and all property owners, of course, are always have input in that regard. So again,
And I'd be happy to volunteer to help out on the planning as well. I care about it and what it brings to our community. But I felt like at this time, when you are supposedly going to vote on this or the acceptance of it possibly tonight, it's a good time for me to voice that concern. So thank you very much.
No, and thank you. And just so you know, like I said, that the Parks and Recs plan, it's a guide. It's not a set in stone. This is the only way we can move a bike path from point A to point B. So by all means, thank you for speaking to that tonight.
Thank you for listening.
Anybody else? Sure. If you don't mind, again, if you state your name just so the clerk can put it in the
Sure.
record, please.
John McSula, 304 Myers, Shorewood. Direct neighbors with the Sharps. And we have a large footage of riverfront that goes right through our yard. And the proposed bike path would also go right through our yard. Some of the things that we see around the river and the community there. We have 2 small boys, and we're just kind of concerned about the safety and welfare of all that, and people on the property and everything like that. The rest of the plan looks great. Just want to be aware that we are aware of what's happening and want to be part of the planning also. So.
And thank you, and I am sure you already heard me speak
Yeah.
to that. So as any of those, again, as any that evolves, we will always be in contact with property owners along those ways.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizens wishing to address the village board? All right, seeing none, we will move into this evening's consent agenda. Item number 1 is the approval of the regular meeting minutes of March 14th, 2023. Approval of the special meeting minutes of March 22nd, 2023. Approval of accounts payable in the amount of $1,247,655.01. Approval of the payment amount of $35,201.55 for Cargill de-icing salt. Payment amount of $18,354.10 to National Power Rodding, and that's on our sanitary sewer I&I project, specifically Basin 5 area. Approval of the payment amount of $269,578.71 to Tria Architecture for the Public Works Facility. And I believe that is the final payment on that one, correct, Noriel? Tria, correct, thank you. Number 7 would be the approval of payment in the amount of $66,604.96 to B&H Photo for the board cable room improvements. Payment in the amount of $11,470.50 to ArborTech for the annual Parkway tree pruning. Number 9 is approval of the payment in the amount of $11,340 to Motorola Solutions for the police body camera annual subscriptions. Approval of payment in the amount of $10,000 to Flock Safety for the Flock police cameras. Number 11 would be payment in the amount of $11,038.75 to Teskin Associates for the comp plan. And finally, final payment in the amount of $14,539.10 to Hacienda Landscaping for Diana Park and Kitts Corner Park reconstruction. Are there any agenda items a board member has a question or further discussion or need to move? If not, motion to approve.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion Kirkland, second Selfridge. Roll call, please.
Kiro,
Yes.
Chapman,
Yes.
Kirkland,
Yes.
Selfridge,
Yes.
and Brockman.
Yes.
Okay, consent agenda items have been paid. For this evening, we move into our reports and communications section. Lana, is there anything that you had received otherwise? I know we have one proclamation for Arbor Day, which is the April 28th.
I have nothing, sir.
All right, thank you. We will read into the record the Arbor Day, April 28th, 2023 proclamation. I apologize there. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate temperature, clean the air, produce life-giving oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. Whereas trees are renewable sources, giving us paper, wood for homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. Whereas trees in our village increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas wherever they are planted are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now, therefore, I, Clarence C. DeBold, Mayor of the Village of Shorewood, do hereby proclaim Friday, April 28, 2023 as Arbor Day in the Village of Shorewood, and I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and support their efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this future generation. Dated this 11th day, April 2023. With that, we will move into our order of business for the evening. Order of business would be number one, would be consideration for approval of an ordinance approving and authorizing an annexation agreement between the Village of Shorewood and the Troy Fire Protection District with respect to the property located in unincorporated Kendall County with a mailing address of 748 Jones Road, Minooka, Illinois. The PIN number is listed. This item is up for a first read. Ms. Engel and Attorney Silverman will take it further.
Thank you. So a little over a year ago, the Troy Fire Protection District purchased the Grace Bible Church site on Jones Road. They had a church building there as well as a large gymnasium structure, which worked out very well for the fire district because they were able to take the gymnasium structure, convert it for a fire station, take the church structure with the classrooms and whatnot, and convert it for a training center, which is really meeting their needs quite well. The overall site is just over 24 acres, and they're using about 9 acres of it. They have a proposal, and if we go to the next slide, we'll be able to see that on the screen. You'll see the 2 buildings are existing in blue, and then there's also a fire training tower that will be installed, as well as a pond that's existing that will be enlarged to accommodate some other training opportunities for dive training and things like that. There will also basically be the existing parking lot. We'll have more than enough parking spaces for them, so they'll be retaining most of those. They've come and they've asked for a couple of different things because it's a unique property. One, they've asked us to approve an annexation agreement, and in conversations with the Troy Fire District and the Kendall County Planning Department, we've opted to bring forward what's called a Chatham annexation agreement, which Mr. Silverman will describe, that gives us a little bit more control over the property and basically means that they'll develop according to our ordinances so that when they come into Shorewood, they'll actually meet our code. And because of that, we'll be bringing forward a conditional use permit for a civic use for the fire station and fire training center, as well as a couple of variances they'll need. One will be to allow a taller structure because the fire training tower is taller than our zoning ordinance would require. Another one would be to allow accessory structures in the front and side yards because of things like the pond and the training structures that are differently located on this property. Another one would be for a sign. They're only allowed a very small sign because of the residential zoning for the property. So they'll be requesting an exception there. And because the site's already mostly developed and they're a unique type of use, they're asking for us to approve the landscape plan that is included in your documents today as their final landscape plan instead of following our code to the letter of the code, just because it doesn't really make sense for this scenario where they've got such a large property and it's already developed. We had a little bit of technical issues with our new software, so there were 2 agendas that were produced, one online and one in paper. We'll go off the paper agenda because it's more strict. So at this point, we would ask you to consider a motion to recommend approval of the annexation agreement. And then at the next meeting, unless there are any issues, we would bring back the conditional use and the zoning variance ordinances. So at the end, after Mr. Silverman talks, we can flip to the end, and I've got a proposed motion in case that's easier for whoever would like to make one. Dave, do you have anything to add?
I don't really have a whole lot to add. We went through the agreement in pretty good detail at the public hearing 2 weeks ago. The agreement that you see tonight before you is essentially the same agreement. We did some cleanup, found a few typos and cleaned up a few things in there. Yeah, I think the only substantive thing that we addressed was the stormwater detention areas. During the last 2 weeks, the engineers have gotten together and figured out that what they were proposing for stormwater detention will comply with the village code. So that section of the agreement was changed. So I think that was the only substantive agreement, if I remember correctly, or substantive change. So I'm happy to answer any questions. I can go through it again if you like, but I think we went through it pretty well last time.
And then Jim and Katie in the back room can put the slides back on the screen, and we can flip through them and look at what they're doing. So this is the overall site plan on the aerial. This here is the landscape plan. So they've basically got a very large property. They've kind of got a campus feel where they'll have large trees generally around the pond and throughout the property. On the next slide, we'll see this is the fire station building and the remodeling they'll be doing there. If you flip to the next slide, that's just the other ends of it. And then I think we're going to look next at the, here we go. This is yet another elevation building. I believe that's for the training center. And then I think what's going to show up next is the training tower. The red is just the artist rendition. I think that the one on the left is going to be more accurate. It'll be more of a tan red brick look. That's actually made out of containers that are metal, so it's more appropriate for training. And then the next slide is the monument sign. So it's a tasteful monument sign brick, what we're used to seeing in commercial areas. But because our default zoning is residential and that's appropriate here, they do need an exception. And then last slide, I believe, is a suggested motion. And like I mentioned, annexation agreement today. The other two approvals would be the next meeting.
Does anybody have any questions for Ms. Engel on?
Did the zoning variances, did those have to go through P and Z?
They did. And we had a public hearing last time where we discussed the zoning variances and the conditional use.
Okay. That's all.
Is this the motion? I move to approve an ordinance approving and authorizing an annexation agreement between the Village of Shorewood and Troy Fire Protection District with respect to the property located in unincorporated Kendall County with a mailing address of 748 Jones Road, Minnetonka, Illinois 60447, and waive the second read.
Second.
Motion Kirkland, second Carroll. Roll call, please.
Chapman?
Yes.
Kirkland?
Yes.
Selfridge?
Yes.
Brockman?
Yes.
And Carroll.
Yes.
Could you call the mayor on that one also, please?
And Mayor DeBold.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, item number 1 is approved. Item number 2 will be consideration for approval of an ordinance adopting an update and amendment to the comprehensive plan and map and park recreation master plan for the Village of Shorewood, Will County, Illinois. Ms. Engel, this item up for her.
Thank you. So today is the day that we come forward with the comprehensive plan and the Parks and Rec master plan that we've been working on for the last year and a half. I know that you guys are probably tired of hearing us all talk about that, so we'll keep it brief and leave room for questions. Michael Blue from Tesca Associate has been the lead on this project. He is going to do a brief presentation, then I'll talk for a little bit. Today is the day that technical difficulties are following me, so Michael, when you need to go to the next slide, please just say next slide, and our folks in the back will make it happen for you.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you all, Mayor, members of the board. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight to kind of put a bow on what we've been up to. And I think that you've all seen enough versions of this presentation that I sort of wanted to invite one of you up here to do it. But for those that may be new to this or seeing it for the first time, and to kind of confirm some of the questions you were asking, I'll just quickly go through what we have for you to sum this up. Think of this as the executive summary of the executive summary. If we go to the next slide, you'll see the process that we went through. As Natalie mentioned, it's taken about a year and a half, which is not unusual for comprehensive plans. They are iterative processes. They involve a lot of community engagement and a lot of back and forth. In short, there is a lot of data collection, there's a lot of talking to the community, and then there's the kind of technical ideas that turn into the recommendations. The next slide talks about what's in the plan. So this is effectively the table of contents, and you know these topics. These are things that are common to plans in all sorts of communities. So this is not unusual, but the contents of the plan is certainly specific to Shorewood and identifies the goals and opportunities that we've talked about. The next slide, there's more to this. The next slide talks about the rest of what's here and notes that the Park and Rec plan as an update is also an element of the comprehensive plan that establishes it as the policy of the village and is useful when you're looking for grants. The next slide really highlights the heart of what a plan is. It's a community plan. It's not a technical study. It's not an engineering study. It's not an architecture study. It builds on what we learned from the community, and that's what the recommendations come from. It also builds on the previous plan. So we took what has been done in the past. This is not just a point in time, but really does build. The next slide talks a little bit more about how we engage people, not just in terms of the comprehensive plan, but next slide. Shows that we similarly went through the process for the Parks and Rec plan. A couple words about the recommendations of those, and then I'm glad to answer any questions that you may have. The next slide shows what is really the heart and soul of a comprehensive plan, which is the land use map. Answers the question, God, you've heard me say this a bunch of times, but when developers come to the village and they meet with staff or they talk to any of you and they say, what does the village want to see here? This is really the heart and soul of that answer. And it's something that has been thought through and vetted with the community and has some logic behind it. The next slide is where most of the effort and energy went to in this comprehensive plan, which was the sub-areas. And Natalie's going to talk a little bit more about those. But these are areas that are, one, either going to see development pressure, or two, present opportunities for development. And so that's why they're highlighted in the plan and are a big part of this plan. The next slide, if you will, is really just a quick summary of what the findings and recommendations are. This really is the executive summary on the very first page of the comprehensive plan, and it summarizes a lot of what we heard. It talks about the DuPage River as an asset and an opportunity for recreation. It's not the construction plans for where anything goes. What the mayor said is absolutely correct, and I just want to echo that. But the ideas of trails, the idea of taking advantage of the river as an asset, these are all things we heard over and over again, and based on our experience in other communities, it's unique, and it's something that can be taken as an asset, but that has got to be balanced with the needs of residents, and we know that will happen as you go through. If we go to the next slide, we can see a similar set of recommendations that are summarized from the Parks and Recreation Plan. The bottom line is that the village, taking care of the parks and providing recreational services, is doing a good job with that. There's some ideas in here for enhancing physical areas and programs, but the bottom line is that the services are provided pretty well, and there's a great way to, the services are provided very well, what am I saying? And that there are some opportunities for enhancement, and those are identified here. The next slide has got really what this becomes all about, and that's implementation. So this last chapter of the plan says, these are all the things we talked about, but how do we make them happen? Who's involved in making them happen? How expensive might they be? And those are all summarized here, and this becomes a tool for the village to use on an ongoing basis in terms of deciding what are the next areas of priority. Last but not least, the very last slide just says thank you. And it's fuzzy here, but the names of everybody who's been involved. The steering committee was terrific. The plan commission got involved. You all were involved. We very much appreciated the chance to work with your staff in terms of making this happen. As I said when I started, this is a community effort, not a technical study, and these are just some of the people who were involved. So we thank you for the opportunity to work with you on the plan. We hope that it serves you very, very well in the future. And with that, Natalie, I know you were going to talk about sub-areas.
Sure. And Katie, if you could move to the next slide, please. One of the questions that I just wanted to kind of address is the idea of, why did you choose to change this to amend this comprehensive plan? What changed since 2007, and why do we need to keep doing comprehensive plans? Three really big things that happened over the last couple decades: the recession, the housing boom, or bust, however we want to look at it, the pandemic. It changed a lot of things. Lending practices have changed. It's more difficult now for homeowners to buy homes, and especially for younger homeowners to buy homes. The Star Line transit line, the metro line that was going to go ring the suburbs, really isn't going to come to fruition, so we had to modify our plan that way. We all like those visits from Amazon and UPS, and a lot of people have shifted to online shopping, and not just for books and stuff like that, but now for groceries, and that's really starting to have an impact on retail and how much retail communities can support. People are still buying things and they're still spending money. It's just coming to their door differently. People are also likely to choose experiences over goods. They would rather go to a movie. They'd rather go on vacation. They'd rather do something fun or go out to a restaurant instead of buy the latest, greatest TV or game system or dress or whatever it is. And also what we're seeing is generational preferences for housing. Us Gen Xers, we all wanted the 3,000 square foot house, but now we're seeing the newer generation who would rather have more free time and more experiences and don't necessarily want that large house. So we had to look at, how we're going to accommodate and keep growing that way. The next slide shows, a little bit of what's different about this plan. I didn't want to, bore you like crazy, but it talks about a little bit more of a conservative growth plan instead of the really, ambitious growth plan that we were all hoping for because of what we were seeing back in the early 2000s. The amount of retail has changed. I think, we would have envisioned Ridge Road and all of our arterials being huge retail corridors 2 decades ago. But now we realize, you know what, it's not going to be that much, right? It's going to be more housing, it's going to be more experience. We're not quite going to have that concentration of retail, so that's scaled back a little bit. The town center area where the transit-oriented development, where the metro is, really can't happen any longer. So it's more single-family residential with a little bit more density and maybe some mixed use up towards Jefferson, but it's not as dense as it was once. Industrial and logistics are huge right now because everybody is ordering from Amazon and ordering stuff online. So instead of building, large stores, large warehouses that they're building that then shipping out to us, and there's more demand for that. So this plan addresses where is it appropriate to do that and how can we bring in that type of stuff and capitalize on that market without impacting our quality of life. Obviously, we did, used updated information, and the sub-area plans are just kind of the things I thought that would be good for you to see because it's kind of the crux of the plans. And to be honest, even before we've had this plan approved, it's kind of the documents that we've been pointing to when we talk to developers and trying to give them a picture of what they can do in Shorewood. So I'll just flip through those quickly. This one is the I-55 Gateway Corridor. And I think, we all sort of know this property. It's right along 55 on Northwest Frontage Road. It's really a challenging property. A lot of those parcels have been for sale for a long time and they're not really moving. And part of the challenge is there's a lot of wetlands there. There's a lot of floodplain there. There's no utilities. It's very expensive to develop it. So we asked the consultants to take a good look at, what realistically can go there. And it's not a Walmart. It's most likely something that's going to capitalize on the DuPage River. It's going to capitalize on Hamel Woods and not have a very high utility need. So we've talked about things like nature centers and things like that would be more interesting, more of an asset for the community, but not heavy utility users. We also talked about how, that area doesn't look very good right now and how we need to really, use it as a gateway. And I know, Trustee Carroll, you've talked about the idea of having, gateway signage and messaging and stuff like that. And we talked about doing that here. There's a couple pictures in the comp plan about places like the Arboretum and stuff like that, where they've really done some stuff. So the idea of doing that type of an environment. The next plan is for the Shorewood Industrial Park. Shorewood Industrial Park along Earl and Geneva is a really interesting place because it was built as an industrial park and then, gosh, they put houses right behind it. So it's become a little bit challenging. And we've seen over the last several years, different businesses move in that aren't really industrial. Places like, Dynasty Baseball and the dance places and the yoga studios and stuff like that. We've also seen those retail properties sit vacant for decades. So we asked the consultants to take a look at how this would develop. And they talked about, one, keeping stable for existing users. They also talked about maybe looking at the zoning ordinance and seeing whether it makes sense to allow and really plan for things like the gymnastics places and the baseball places and stuff like that need the big spaces. They also talked about the property along Jefferson Street, and we know a lot of people walk away from it because it's expensive, but it's also very deep, and it's located near residential and stuff like that. So this plan looks at the idea of, could you have retail up front, maybe some office or some flex space behind, and then maybe transitioning with some townhouses to the residential area. Just an option. All of this stuff is broad brush ideas. Nothing will get built exactly like it is, but it's a conversation starter, and we think it's a creative way to look at that area. On the next slide, we talk about the Cottage Street corridor. I really wish that I could send people to vacant lots and outlots on 59 when they're looking to build, but we're pretty much full. So we need to look at, where is the next frontier? Where is the next area to develop? And the Cottage Street corridor may well be that area because it's got a fairly high amount of traffic. It's, on 59 and stuff like that. So we looked at how can this develop? We have our public works site that's, on the market right now and getting a lot of interest. So we looked at how to develop this. The plan on the triangular property, so it shows kind of like a destination retail entertainment center. We also looked at the properties along Cottage Street, be it the strip retail or be it the houses, and if those are to develop, how do they develop in the future? Is it more dense residential? Can it be commercial? So we've got some ideas that make sense for the block sizes, but they're flexible, right? Because it could really go either way. So we tried to be flexible. On the next slide, this one's one of the more aggressive ones, it's kind of realizing that, what's hot right now, what people are building right now, what Shorewood is incredibly well positioned for, is industrial and logistics development. And we have a little bit of it on Southwest Frontage Road, but it's always full and there's always demand. So if we wanted to bank on that market, we think the most appropriate place would be south and west of the Public Works facility. There's frontage along I-80 and visibility along I-80. We think that the Ridge Road and I-80 intersection would be fairly convenient, but if there were ever going to be industrial in that area, the road network and everything needs to be really carefully designed so that it doesn't impact the residential uses. We need to be really well buffered and stuff like that. So we've looked at that here. We also think that, maybe it would be a good transition with all the utility uses out there. And then the final sub-area is the Ridge Road District. And, although at one point we would have seen this be an entirely industrial corridor, we think that's probably a little bit unrealistic in this market. So we looked at, what uses would be appropriate. We looked at sort of a mixed-use hub at Ridge and Jefferson. We think there's some good potential for some higher density townhomes or something like that with a, nice environment, maybe some mixed use and low density retail that caters to the neighborhood, probably some highway retail, including maybe even a gas station or a Dunkin' Donuts or the types of things that people go to that take advantage of the access to I-80. And also, what we really hadn't thought of, and you guys brought up as a good idea, and that's maybe some institutional uses. That's going to be the new frontier. That's going to be a high development area. So, be it a school or, a junior college or a, hospital type use or a medical type use, we think there's a good opportunity for some industrial uses there. So here you see a plan that shows, really two plans. One that shows some broad brush land use colors with red being commercial and yellow being residential and stuff like that, and then the other that shows one depiction of how it could be. But we think there's some opportunities for a nice hub in that location. That's it for our sub-area plans. I also, on the next slide, just kind of popped up a couple maps for you to look at, just because that's something that's also included in the plan. So the ones I popped up there were the idea of the, the roadway maps and the classifications of roadway and where we want to see connections, and also the trail maps and stuff like that, because that was important to the residents, and the idea of, where we go for trails, and if we're trying to chase grants and stuff like that, it's important to have a plan to be able to show them. So I popped a couple of those maps up. I know you've all seen them, but I just thought that would be interesting to see it. And that's really all I have. I'm happy to take questions, but I thought those were the important areas to highlight for you and Michael to highlight as well.
Well, I know this has been a process. We've had feedback from the public. We've had feedback from the steering committee. As Natalie touched on and Mr. Blue touched on, we've touched on with all of these groups from the workshops, planning and zoning was involved, from 59 redevelopment corridors potentially down there to how do we develop next to our power plant and our immediate neighbors out to the west? How do we continue pushing west responsibly and maintain that growth and capture revenues and potential benefits for our municipality out there along the Ridge Road? So I give the group overall, and I give our citizens and our teams from our steering committee and our citizen workshops credit for putting forth the time to contribute to this and come up with a pretty well-balanced plan. There was some of the conversations were spirited. There was some pushback at different ideas. What one person may have liked, somebody else didn't. But in all, it was great to see everybody actually work together and get a lot of positive feedback from the community and put together this plan. So I don't know if anybody has any questions for Natalie, but I just kind of at least want to share a little observation that I said I joined most of the different workshops and stuff, but I at least wanted to share a little insight from what I saw along the way too. So, but unless anybody's got any questions for Natalie or anything, this item's up for a first read. It can be waived on the first read can be waived for approval for this evening as well.
Seeing no questions, I'll make a motion, but before I do, I want to thank you again for your efforts. It's been 18 months, and your advisory group that you had and all the professionals that you assembled, and my plan commissioners that went through this several times, and the board, of course. So appreciate all the efforts.
Thank you.
But make a motion to approve ordinance adopting an update and amendment to the comprehensive plan and map and park and recreation master plan for the village of Shorewood, Will County. waive the second read.
Second.
Motion Brockman, second Carroll. Roll call, please.
Kirkland.
Yes.
Selfridge.
Yes.
Brockman.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
And Chapman.
Yes.
Item number 2 has been approved. And one thing, so anybody that was at any of our workshops and public workshops during this comprehensive plan, the Tesca group did some sort of a raffle. They did some different raffles along the way, but apparently there's some last iPod Air Pro things that they want to raffle off. So anybody that was here that filled out their names, Ms. Kirkland's going to pull a name out of a box.
Don't pull your own.
I hope it's not mine. No, I'm
I
just,
know
it won't be
they
mine.
put tape on it, so they didn't want anything messed with, so. Ooh, my bad, I apologize. Now, Ms. Kirkland, I'm just gonna raise this up.
It won't take much to get it above me. You know that. Too high.
Oh, jeez.
I know, right? All right, there's only one.
Joan Riley, so we have a phone number and an email address. Ms. Engel will reach out to these individuals, to Ms. Joan Riley for that. They participated in the events from the workshops and whatnot, so we will make certain that that last item goes to her. So, thank you, Mr. Blue and Tesca and everybody that participated along the way.
Thank you all very much. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to business item number 3, be consideration for approval of an ordinance publishing the official zoning map of the Village of Shorewood, Will County, Illinois. This item is up for a first read. Trustee Brockman and Ms. Engel will address this item.
Thank you, Mayor. We looked at this at our last meeting, and I don't believe there was any updates from
No.
2022.
No, we're just required to approve it each year. No rezoning, so same
Okay.
thing. If you liked it last year, same this year.
With that, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance publishing the official zoning map of Village of Shorewood, Will County, and waive the second read.
Second.
Motion Brockman, second Selfridge. Roll call, please.
Selfridge.
Yes.
Brockman.
Yes.
Carroll.
Yes.
Chapman.
Yes.
And Kirkland.
Yes.
All right, the zoning map's approved. Item number 4, be consideration for approval of a bid award and contract to GLI Services doing business as George's Landscape for the K Crust Park reconstruction project in the amount of $194,800 and authorize execution of the contract consistent with the bid documents. Public Works Director Noriega.
Thank you, Mayor. So continuing with our park replacement program, K Crest Park is next. Some history that was recently happened, of course, K Crest was originally constructed in 1997. Playground equipment is over 25 years old. TRIA JSD was able to put together conceptual plans for us. This was a number of different conceptual versions were presented at an open house on December 5th. The public that attended unanimously selected the concept that you see before you. If you also recall, Village Board approved the purchase of the playground equipment. So utilizing our Sourcewell government pricing at the Village Board meeting on February 14th, we are expecting delivery of the playground equipment this August of 2023. Project was advertised for bid in February and 2 bids were received. George's Landscape, also known as GLI Landscaping, is the lowest responsible bidder with the amount of $194,800. We have a total budget in the project, for the project totaling $410,000. Construction will begin at the end of the summer and is expected to be completed by December of 2023. TRIA and JSD also provided their recommendation to award. Although we have not worked directly with George's in the recent years, they are working on a number of projects that TRIA and JSD are currently working on. So we're recommending the Village Board accept the base bid proposal and award the contract to GLI Services, which is also known as George's Landscaping, for the Village's 2023 K Crest Park reconstruction project in the amount of $194,800 and authorize execution of the contract consistent with the bid documents. Any questions?
I don't think I've ever seen a reference list like this in my entire life. So.
Right?
Oh, I guess they're gonna be okay, huh?
I move to approve a bid award and contract to GLI Services, Inc., doing business as George's Landscaping, Inc., for the K-Crest Park reconstruction project in the amount of $194,800 and authorize execution of the contract consistent with the bid documents.
Second. Motion Kirkland, second Carroll. Roll call, please.
Brockman,
Yes.
Carroll,
Yes.
Chapman,
Yes.
Kirkland.
Yes.
And Selfridge.
Yes.
Thank you.
No problem. Item number 4 has been approved. With that, we will move over to trustee comments. Trustee Brockman.
Thank you, Mayor. Our next planning and zoning meeting should be May 3rd, too early for an agenda as of right now, so May 3rd, thank you.
And on the May 3rd one, you may be a couple of people short, but we will get those rectified in the beginning of May.
First meeting of May?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
We'll get those reappointments squared away.
okay, wonderful.
Thank you, sir. Trustee Carroll.
Nothing tonight.
No problem. Thank you. Trustee Chapman.
Yeah, no report. I just have a question and more for Dave. For Mrs. Sharp and this other gentleman here. Don't those properties own still because of the grandfathered effect? They own to the center of the river?
Yeah, I would assume that the village has no easement or property rights through there that I'm aware of. So, you know,
Because we always fought that. I mean, or we went in and made an offer, but everybody turned it down. And I thought that the last plan had bridges to bring the path back from that side of the river back to the north side.
North side.
Yeah, I don't know about the plan.
So apparently this plan's been changed to go back through that property?
No, and these are really just fairly broad brush lines. We know that there will be a bridge in that part of the river. You know, it's really, before we've gone into the planning stages and looked at the property ownership and looked at the, you know, depths of the river and all that stuff, we really don't know where a bridge would go. So we know that it'll go generally up and down the river and that there will be a bridge in that area, but it's really too soon to know where it'll go. And obviously, you know, and Mrs. Sharp and I spoke about this, we're not about to go and start condemning people's property. We'd talk about it, we'd talk about the plan, we'd approach property owners as well.
Get Charlie to build a bridge, we can name it after him.
You got a thumbs up?
So, we've been having discussions with the Forest Preserve for over 2 years about using the river as an amenity and connecting Hamel Woods down to Shaman Woods. So, again, what's on paper, what you see is but one rendition. It is not a plan. We know that we own both sides of the river from West Shore Park to Gabrielson Park, which is an underutilized piece of land that we acquired back when we acquired that land back in the late 90s from the floods. So there'll be a number of ideas that'll be presented in the future when funding becomes available. We've got a lot of park issues that we're dealing with now. We're going to talk about River's Edge Park here in just a minute. So
Don't lose any sleep. Okay?
Is that it, sir?
Yeah, thank you.
problem. Thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Kirkland.
I have nothing tonight, thank you.
No problem. Trustee Luciano is absent. I apologize. Trustee Selfridge.
I have nothing.
No problem. With that, motion to,
I've got 3 things.
and real quick, and, yep, 1 second, I'm gonna come back. And we don't have department heads on this agenda, and we normally do anything from any of the departments that are here this evening. Anything that you guys want to add real quick or not? Natalie?
Just a quick update on the website. We've been working with the website developers. I know a couple of you wanted an update. We've essentially gone over all of the design stuff with them. They are actually 1 day away from finishing the HTML design, which is the whole backbone, color scheme, and everything of our website. We've ironed out the website map, which is where all the pages are going to go. And then the next phase will be where we really bring all the data in and do all the fine tuning. So we're hoping by the end of next month to have an updated website.
Very good. Noriel, you got anything?
Nothing significant, sir.
Unless anybody's got a question for Noriel, we'll move beyond them. Finance? Building? Police?
not a report, I just wanted to say thanks to the board and my fellow department heads who sent messages and cards and flowers for the passing of my mother. So thank you very much. Much appreciated. Thank you.
Administrator?
Okay, a couple quick things. Number one, we received notification today from my EPA that their initial review of our submissions was very favorable, and we have some documents to fill out, but this will set us up for applying for financing in the fall for our water receiving station, underground storage tanks, and transmission line to the Windstone area. So that was all very, very good news that just came in this morning. Second thing, you all know that we acquired the River's Edge Park, 32 acres. We had two funding things that were there. One is we budgeted $450,000 last year to do the mass grading and get it ready for development. That development was then to be facilitated by the OSLAD grant and then the matching funds that we set aside. So as we went out to bid, we did not receive the large number of bidders that we had hoped for. The project was too large for some and too small for others. So the bids that we did receive were significantly over what our engineers had estimated. So staff is right now reviewing how we're going to react to that. We're under some constraints with the bidding process that we'll either have to take action or forego the bids. We have some concerns, and we've just met yesterday, so we've got some more work to do, but I wanted to let you know that we're probably going to come back to the board on the 25th with a recommendation one way or the other. We have some concerns that if we are to forego the bids, even though it was high, we'd be setting ourselves back into next year's construction cycle, which would then put us up against the wall for the time constraints on the OSLAD grant. So we've got some really hard decisions to make and allow staff a little bit more time to work on that, but we will be back to you in 14 days on that. And then lastly, an update at the request of Trustee Carroll, the banner program that we do in the Town Center Park was much more well received this year. I think we have 16 banners for the project this year. So those have been ordered. Staff's getting some more arms for the poles, and we'll be setting those up here before Memorial Day. Likewise, the brick program that's been ongoing since, I don't know what year you started it, but we have been successful again this year. We had a couple of people submit purchase orders for bricks. We do 2 orders for those a year, once in the spring. They're installed by Memorial Day, and we also do one in the fall that's installed by Veterans Day. So after Memorial Day, so that we don't have any confusion or unsatisfiable expectations, if somebody submits an order April 15th, we don't want to have them under the guise that they'll get that in by Memorial Day. After Memorial Day, we'll put it out, publish it, we'll ask for more people that want to participate in that in the fall, and we'll get that done before Veterans Day. Any questions? All right.
Okay. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Kirkland, second Selfridge. Roll call, please.
Carroll.
Yes.
Chapman.
Yes.
Kirkland.
Yes.
Selfridge.
Yes.
And Brockman.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.